from what I've seen, I believe we're waiting for just two folks. We have a few that can't make it tonight. I think Joe Banofsky is joining us, as is Peter Roos.
Joe's here. I got to transfer him over. I just
Okay.
see
Hello,
him
Joe.
now. Okay, Joe, we've got you.
And Peter Roos.
And Peter needs to come over also. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter. So I think as far as mission goes, all are present and accounted for.
Peter looks like he's in the twilight zone.
Doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what some people say at work too.
And it's almost 7, but we're all here. I don't know whether the applicant is all set and ready to go yet. We'll give them obviously time to get here.
I do see two members of the team for our first application are here.
Right.
Also. Okay, and I'll promote them over as panelists once the meeting gets started.
Okay. Well, it's 7 o'clock. We're all here. If they're all here, let's begin. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 18th, 2021 meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. We have one main item tonight, and that's a public hearing. It's for application 21-21, which is a regulation amendment. The applicant is 14 Railroad Avenue LLC. It's a petition for regulation amendment to the Madison Planning Regulations 6.2.3 to include new subsection parens 0. Before we talk to the applicant, I would tonight like to seek our two alternates. Carol Snow, would you mind sitting in for Dr. Hay? And Peter Roos, would you please sit for Joel Miller, please?
Happy to.
Thank you. So with that, we will ask who from the applicant is here to make their presentation. And this is a public hearing.
I have John Matthews here, and the attorney was here, and I believe he may have logged off trying to get back on. Perhaps, John, you'd like to begin with your presentation, and we'll allow for another moment for the attorney.
Okay, because, yeah, I wasn't on, and I found a link that let me join as a participant. And then I had to, it rejoined me. So here I am.
Does Attorney Iacorsi have an opening statement you wanted to make first, John, or do you want to proceed?
Well, he was planning on doing that.
And he,
I think it would make sense anyway, so that he gets to view your the entire meeting as well. So if we can hold on a minute for him.
Yeah, let's see if he can hook back up.
see if we get him on.
Or if you can reach him on your cell phone, John, if he needs to be talked through something, we can try and help him on our end.
Let me see if I can do that. Uh,
Yeah, he had said that he's on, but he can't get on with speaker or video.
That's right. He was, and then he
Yeah.
disappeared. Oh, here he is. I've got him now. Let me promote him. He's back in.
Okay, so he didn't answer the cell phone, so I guess he's on now.
He's on now. Hi,
Sorry,
Michael.
Yes.
I was
Yes,
trying to get on and I didn't realize you had to promote me, so fair enough.
But somehow you got a picture, Mike, but I didn't get a picture. I don't know what the deal was there.
Well, I got lucky.
Hmm.
All right, well, rather than holding us up while we work to sort that out, John tells us, Mike, you have an opening statement, the application you'd like to make before John begins?
I do, just very briefly, what we're trying to do here is amend the regulation, and really the addition or the attachment to the application has the addition to the regulation. So it would be adding a new provision, section 6.2.3. You will see the section O as we have labeled it. And what we're trying to amend here is, or allow here is the back buildings, not the building on Railroad Avenue, but the buildings behind it. And in this proposed regulation, 130 feet from Railroad Avenue to be up to 35 feet. So that is the sum and substance of our application. And I will let John move forward with the remainder.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm sorry you can't see my pretty face, but somehow
Also,
this parcel.
difficulty hearing you, John.
Pardon? Can you hear me?
No.
We had some difficulty, not this last sentence, but before that, it sounded almost like an echo.
So can you hear me?
Yes, John.
Yes.
Okay. We've looked at this parcel for quite a while in terms of what seemed to be the best use for this parcel. And our final decision was it should be multifamily housing, even though it's in the downtown district. It's really from Wall Street, which is really the commercial part. Railroad Avenue is primarily residential. And so it seemed like the best use for this piece. This parcel is a odd shape. It's a reverse L-shaped piece of property. It comes off of Railroad Avenue, fairly narrow. The existing house that's there really limits the driveway capacity. So what I'm going to talk about is briefly what we've looked at as a possible development, and then get into the issues of the height.
John,
because of the driveway situation, pardon?
Some parts of what you're saying for some reason are cutting out.
Yeah, for some reason my internet is cutting in and out. I don't know why.
Perhaps he should call into the call-in number. That would be crystal clear.
Well,
Before we do that, John, I know this is a regulation amendment, but you have a specific intent. You wouldn't happen to have an exhibit.
I have some photographs that I want to put in that the town has, they can put up. I have 4 photographs that will be
I can
Part
share
of my-
those for you, John.
part of my argument, okay, for the regulation amendment. But just, I don't want to get hung up on the actual proposal, which we had submitted, and then we removed that proposal because it was determined that our height didn't meet the regulation. But the regulation has stated that in the DV and downtown district, typically you can go, it's 30 feet, but you can go either 45, it used to be 40, or 45 with special exception. And the bulk of the areas except Wall Street and Railroad Avenue. So these pictures I put up, this is a picture, the top one is 64 Wall Street. And as you can see, there's a front building to the extreme right that I actually designed that met the 30-foot height. And then the Clarettes got from this commission the approval to build a 4-story addition in the back of this building. And there's not, and the rules say simply 30 feet. So there's been deviations from those rules. And then the second picture shows the Clarity property. The building on the left is next to Bradley and Wall, and it supposedly is 30 feet. I'll take somebody's word for it. It looks higher to me. But then in the back of that building, there's a building that goes to 50 feet high in the air. If we go to the next picture, Aaron, it's actually, again, a 4-story building. There's on the left, on the bottom, there's offices. On the right, it's parking. And then there's 3 levels of space above that. And then the fourth photo is the other side of that building, the north side. And that building is 15 feet from our property line. Our parcel backs into this piece. And so right adjacent to us, we have this huge, huge building. And so it seemed to me that if you could do that on Wall Street, when it says you can't, why couldn't you do something to the rear of Railroad Avenue as long as you kept the buildings on Railroad Avenue in the same residential scale, just like the buildings on Wall Street, the ones that front the street are the residential scale. From a planning standpoint, that makes perfect sense. But these are very, very deep lots, and to use them in the back. And if you go back to photo 1, if you would, the other thing in the reg says that the maximum square footage footprint of a building is 3,000 square feet. Well, if you look at 64 Wall Street, that building is probably 7,000 square feet in terms of a footprint, and that's one building. And so to me, from a planning standpoint, it makes sense to let you have some relief on the height when you're well away from the street. And the reason that we need that is that we're trying to do residential units that have garages on the first floor. You need a certain amount of space for garage doors and the overhead openers and so forth. So you're cranked up a full big story. Then the next floor is living space. And because these are going to be high-end units, we'd like to have like 9-foot ceilings rather than 8-foot ceilings. And so, and then we go up to the 3rd floor and we have bedrooms. And the time you try to get air conditioning ducts in, if we could do, we could get air conditioning ducts in the floor structure. But if we're trying to hold it down to 30 feet, we have no place to run air conditioning ducts. The buildings that front on Wall Street, a lot of them are really old. Some of them have 7-foot ceiling heights. A lot of them have no air conditioning, and that's fine. But the stuff in the back in today's modern world need all of these kind of elements to really make them marketable and usable. I know we've You know, we've asked for 35 feet. We could probably do with a little less than that, if that would make people happy. I think we could probably make it work in like 32 feet. I mean, a 2-foot difference is not changing the character of really anything, especially when these 3 buildings are back behind the buildings along the frontage of Wall Street, of Railroad Avenue. And so we really think it makes a planning sense to allow taller buildings, and we're saying 130 feet from Railroad Avenue. We're probably the only lot on Railroad Avenue that's in the DVD zone that has the depth for this to happen. The other ones are regularly shallow lots. This lot happens to be very deep.
Okay, we're talking off, a lot about this. This is for one specific property. And we've seen a lot of nice pictures of existing buildings, but you have not shown us anything as to where this property is in relation to Railroad Avenue or the buildings you've talked about. Do you have a site plan or anything that can show us where this parcel is located in relation to the?
Well, I don't, because we withdrew our application when it was said it couldn't be hurt. The Clarity building is totally adjacent to us. That huge big building is 15 feet off the property line.
I may be able to help with that, John, and share the aerial photo of this particular area. And in that sense, when you are through with your proposal, John, I can offer some staff comments as well to the commission. I'll share this GIS here.
Aaron, if you look it up on the SCROG website, I think that's, and go into parcels, that's probably the best. Oh, there you go.
Sure. So to familiarize yourself, the top of the map here is north. This is Wall Street and Railroad here. The properties in the downtown
It calls
district.
it Scotland, but it's really Railroad.
Correct. The properties
So
fronting
our
on.
lot is lot 14.
That is the property that they're seeking to develop. However, the regulation amendment would affect properties within the zone that are fronting on Railroad, which would essentially be this lot number 4, number 8, number 10, 14, 16, and 20. And as you can see, some of these properties do have a depth greater than 130 feet. That would essentially be a line that would run across the properties here. As John indicated, this application is the result of a proposal that came forward as a special exception permit that has been withdrawn at this point because it was determined by our zoning enforcement officer that the building height did not comply with current regulations. So the options before the applicant were, one, to either design the new multifamily residential building in compliance with our current zoning regulations, or two, apply for a variance through the Zoning Board of Appeals, in which case it would likely be challenging to demonstrate any type of zoning hardship. And the third option would be to apply for a text amendment to the regulations, and that is the path that the property owner has taken. I do want to just bring to your attention that we have the specific language of the text. I will share with you so that you can read that for the record. I think it was summarized a bit, but I'm not sure that it was shared with you fully during the public hearing, and that would be to be adding a subsection letter O to section 6.23 of our zoning regulations, specifically property fronting on Railroad Avenue, buildings to the interior of a lot with frontage on Railroad Avenue may have an average height of 35 feet. However, there must be a building with an average height of 30 feet or less between the interior taller buildings and Railroad Avenue. The taller interior buildings must be 130 feet from Railroad Avenue. If the building with an average height of 30 feet fails to provide a sufficient buffer to the interior buildings to the satisfaction of the commission, then the commission may require landscaping to provide a buffer from the street. Just some comments from the town planner. I do want to bring your attention to our current regulations as written, which is section 6.23. This is, you could see scrolling up here, the bulk standards with respect to the downtown district zones. And letter H, I wanted to bring this to your attention because I feel that our current regulations have some inaccuracies in the text that I think are relevant to this particular application. Letter H specifically, average building height is indicated shall be a maximum of 30 feet. The Planning and Zoning Commission by special exception permit per section 4 may approve a height of 45 feet, excluding properties with frontage on Wall Street. The building height reductions for narrow lots in section 2.71 shall not apply in the D or DW district. And this was revised in May 25th, 2018. And that revision specifically, I wanted to, many of you were here actually on the commission during that revision, and I'll share that with you. In 2018, there was an application made by Jerry Davis to the commission to clarify the language, the regulations in the language in section 6.23H. Whether or not that referred to maximum building height or total building height versus average building height. And at that time, the commission did clarify that the subsection H refers to average building height, and the special exception ability to approve up to 45 feet would be an average building height of 45 feet. And bringing you back to these regulations, I think what's relevant here is that the written text in section H does specify that the additional height provision by special exception excluded properties with frontage on Wall Street. However, when you look down here at the dimensional standards in the table still indicates a maximum height and does not reflect that language of the average height. And you'll note that the other downtown districts, the roads do allow for the average of a 30-foot height and that 45-foot average height by special exception. And it does exclude Wall Street, but it also excludes Railroad Avenue. And Railroad Avenue is not indicated in the language of the regulation to be excluded from that ability to apply for a special exception. So from organizational standpoint and clarification of our zoning regulations, I question if a specific text amendment with the addition of this new subsection O is the appropriate way for the commission to address some of the questions in our regulations, as they are as it's indicated, very specific to a couple of properties here, with the language, for example, 130 feet from Railroad Avenue. And perhaps it may be better explored to see if the intent of this regulation was really to exclude Railroad Avenue and the ability to review additional building height by special exception. And if really this language was only intended for Wall Street to be excluded, or if it did indeed include Railroad Avenue at that time. Because should Railroad Avenue not be excluded, then perhaps this particular proposal could, the additional building height of a few feet, be addressed by a special exception with the commission. So that's not a request before you today. This specific text amendment is, but I did want to bring that to the commission's attention, that from a regulatory standpoint, there may be some discrepancies in our current text that we could benefit from clarification rather than an additional text amendment.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the commission have any questions at this point of John? Jim?
I do. Yeah. Okay, so one thing, I know we've had this discussion before, but the definition of average building height.
You're looking for that?
Yes.
I'll read it to you. Just bear with me 1 second. I just want to turn to the page here. There is an illustration, and it varies depending on the particular roof line. I can share those illustrations with you if you'd like to see that. And that may provide some background as far as the specific examples that John had shared in photos. I do not have that information, whether or not the maximum 30-foot height was varied on those two properties that we shared. And if the commission is looking for that information, it may be appropriate to continue the hearing so that I could get you that information.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
We're talking about 14. And Aaron, I think you addressed this earlier, and maybe I just didn't catch it. It occurs that, does the applicant own 10, 14, 16, and 20? And they're thinking about developing all of that?
No.
Joe, this is a text amendment, and I think maybe Michael could address this. This is not a specific application for one particular property. The applicant is 14 Railroad LLC and happens to own that number 14 Railroad. However, the text amendment does apply to the particular district and lots fronting on Railroad. So I believe there are 4 lots that would be subject to this regulation.
Which are the ones I just named?
Yes, all those that are fronting. And
So if I may, yeah.
Yes, Michael.
If I may, so first of all, just to go back, I do have some maps. So if I'm allowed to share them, I can show the maps that we did file with the special exception application, which we were told we had to withdraw. So it wasn't just that we withdrew it. We actually were told that we had to withdraw it. So just to be clear on that. And to go back to the regulation that Ms. Mannix was talking about, is that special exception that's allowed for everybody else except Wall Street, that's clear in the regulations, doesn't allow for Railroad Avenue. So while we were told to withdraw it because the special exception was not clear on whether or not we could do it. The special exception is still sitting at the building department office right now, ready to be filed instantaneously. We moved on to this regulation amendment because this was the manner in with which we were told we had to proceed. That regulation amendment, that application is by the LLC that Ms. Mannix just mentioned, and that LLC only owns that property. I will say that the owners of the LLC also own the property for Bradley and Wall. So part of this is part of that lot. So if you can't picture where it is from the shots that you've seen before, it is next to or behind the parking lot of Bradley and Wall, next to the parking lot. So
Yeah, no, I have the GIS and Google Maps up.
Yeah.
I could clearly see that.
fair enough. So the LLC does not own anything else. Our special exception application that was again withdrawn was to only develop 14 Railroad Avenue.
Page 19-3 of the regs, if I've got a current version, does get into the average definition of building height average. It depends upon the type of roof that goes.
Yes, I can share that section with you. I did pull that up, Jim. Let's see here. So the building height average is average building height measured separately for each distinct portion of the building or other structure, which then directs you to these illustrations following here. Various roof examples: gable roof, hip roof, salt box, gambrel. And so you'll see on the right-hand side is a total height. And then on the left-hand side would show that building height as indicated from the average. That would be considered where the average building height is taken.
So in the example then, Aaron, on gable roof, that first illustration,
Yes,
the height is actually, the average building height is lower than the total height.
that's correct.
And so some of the photos that John had shown, looking at when he mentioned 50 feet, I'm assuming that that was probably the maximum, the total height, and not the average height.
Possibly, I do not have those actual height calculations. I
Okay.
believe I can get those from their fairly recent developments, and we would have those architectural drawings if that is helpful to the commission to have that. I can show you additional roof lines here as well, where that average would be taken, for example, on a flat roof or a mansard.
Yeah, so you look at the A-frame roof down below, that average height, the total height is way higher than the average height in that configuration.
It's essentially the midpoint.
Yeah.
there. Mhm.
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you. I know that we had discussed that before. And prior, maybe it was back in 2018 when we made some of those changes. And I don't have any questions, Ron. I mean, I think I understand the request.
Okay.
I guess the other question though is to Aaron's is that the best way to do it, or do we just do the text amendment to include Railroad Avenue and allow for a special exception for a higher, height?
Right. Are there any other commission questions? I have a couple. John or Mike, I know you followed the requirements for notice and so forth. How many residences abut the property are within, say, 250 feet of the parcel? Because you didn't have to notice anybody, is that correct? you're not required to send notice to,
That's correct. It's a text amendment, not a particular, not an application for a particular property.
so I was just curious as to where it sits in relation to the residential neighborhoods or structures that are nearby.
So when we initially filed the original application, I believe, I'm gonna say, Ron, I don't have the exact number. I'm trying to look for it right now, but I'm gonna say there were about 10
Okay,
that we, for the special exception that we would have had to notify.
right.
And Ron,
Okay.
I think some of those were across the railroad track on the north
I would-
side of the railroad.
I would agree.
Yeah, that could be too. But what I'm curious about is whether they are aware, when we went through the clarity, and even as I recall, was it Here We Are building next to Bradley and Wall, there was some neighborhood input and testimony given. And I don't know whether this, is something that they happen to be aware of or whether they'd be concerned about, possibly support. I don't know.
So also
we
Arbor
have-
Lane.
Arbor Lane, correct. So I was just
That's
curious.
right.
And
So-
do we have any members of the public with us tonight watching this that may want to participate in the public hearing? Aaron, do you have any?
I do not see anyone with their hands raised at this time.
So
I
John,
can-
I'm sorry. I just found it's actually, so without the property located on 102 Wall Street, which is Bradley and Wall,
Yeah.
it would be 12.
12.
The multifamily development of this property is through the special exception process, which, as Michael had indicated, will require notification of abutters prior to the public hearing. And the proper channels were, legal notices were posted for this, as well as posting in the town clerk's office as well for this proposed text amendment.
I have no doubt it was done properly.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether those 10 or 12 property owners were aware. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody follows that stuff that closely.
Sure.
And they may have a comment about increasing the building height because it is a public hearing. And it's hard to hear from the public with it's not easy for them to become aware. And again, I'm not questioning the process because the applicant followed it.
One question that staff had raised was why the new development or the new building could not comply with the 30-foot midpoint average height requirement. John, I don't know if you'd like to speak to that.
Well, I mentioned this earlier, in order to do new construction and have the kind of ceiling heights and mechanical systems that everyone expects, and have a 3-story building, short of having either a flat roof, which we could do it if we did a flat roof, or a very low pitch roof. And so the additional height is really in the pitch of the roof, which is not something that most people are even aware of to begin with. But we need a 3-story building, not a 2.5-story building. Some of those bigger ones on Wall Street are 2.5 stories that supposedly work to the 30 feet. They're not full 3-story buildings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any thoughts on behalf of the commission members?
Yeah, Ron,
Well, before we get a call, let's stick with questions because we are in public hearing and I want to hear from the public as well if there are some members who wish to speak. Any more questions from the commission at this point?
I have a question. I know we're not approving a proposal at this point, it's just the language, but I am wondering if the front house would be torn down and all of the units would be 2 or 3 stories tall, because looking at the maps, the other lots along Railroad Avenue are much shallower, so I think they would remain as smaller housing. Whereas, I understand that this is a deeper lot and it backs to Bradley and Wall and other large buildings behind it. But I think the houses that remain on Railroad Avenue would probably remain on a smaller scale. But can either of you talk, John or Michael, about the proposal itself just a little
Yes.
bit more?
In other words, we were taking down the existing house because it pinched the driveway to an unacceptable width. And we were reconstructing a very similar building, just shifted about 8 feet to the west. It's a 2.5 story building. I think it's like 25 or 6 feet average height. So it would be in the same scale of the building that's there today. So
Okay.
the whole street facade would pretty much look like the way it does today.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, so on the application, we would be putting in behind it would be about 16 units. So behind that front would be 16, again, residential units. Again, nowhere near the maximum height of the Clarity building behind it. The average height of the Clarity building, because of its low roof, may be again, making it a little bit lower as its average, but these would be residential. These would be, again, fairly short in comparison.
And I know, again, to Carol's point, this isn't a specific application, but 16 units, how many structures would that be in your current thinking?
There are 3 structures. There are 2 that are perpendicular to Railroad Avenue, the 2 closest to Railroad. And then the last one is parallel to the rear property line.
Okay, thank you.
And it's closest to the Bradley and Wall parking lot.
Carol, just to pick up on your question, the current regulations in 6.23 does require a minimum of 2 stories for a structure, and the setback, the front setback from the road is a minimum of 10 feet and a maximum of 20. So the regulation is designed to keep that streetscape as it currently exists.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for clarification purposes, Aaron, if the commission were to approve this text amendment, what would the next step have to be for the applicant to proceed?
After the effective date and
Question, yeah.
beyond the appeal period, then that would become the new zoning regulation, and essentially making their current proposal comply with the zoning standards. And so they would go through the process of special exception permit to develop the multifamily
Okay.
project.
So in that scenario, because of the keyword special exception, then there would be a greater amount of the public that would be involved in the hearing at that point.
That is a mandatory public hearing, and that's where the commission can then look to the specific standards of special exceptions and have some discretion in the review of the overall design of the project. Yes.
So keeping within the purview of this application, all we're looking to do is fix some text that's not balanced throughout everywhere it exists now.
Well, the application is specific, that's before you, and that's a specific language in this new subsection O. So that would if the commission approves this text amendment, it would be the addition of this subsection O, and it would not address the discrepancies that currently exist in section H and our table, and that would be left for another day.
So Aaron, if we approve this tonight, the text amendment, we would be in effect changing everything that's fronting Railroad Avenue, all of those parcels that we saw, if we make that change.
It would allow for an increased building height for a second building on any of the properties fronting on Railroad in this particular zone, with the caveat that the building needs to be, it says it must be 130 feet from Railroad. So there are some other properties that have that depth. I believe it's a 15-foot rear yard setback. So there are a couple that, let's see.
Yeah, I don't think the other,
may.
yeah, I would argue that the other lots just simply don't have the square footage to even, start doing anything that we're deeper, but also wider when it comes back to that Clarity property. So that allows us, the extra space to put in these types of buildings. I don't think the other lots really have that space.
Likely not for the number of units, but a structure, perhaps.
Right.
Maybe not with the.
I would still argue that it would be still with 130 feet behind those lots. Those lots are small enough that you would have a tough time putting a structure in there if it was maybe 5 feet wide. But again, I think that you would have a very tough time doing that.
Unless they were combined.
I'm sorry.
Unless they were combined.
I think even the depth of some of those lots, if you started combining maybe Wall Street lots, again,
No, if the next door neighbor, they sold 2 lots to one developer.
they sold 2 lots. I'm not sure that changes the depth, Ron. So
No, it wouldn't change the depth.
Yeah,
It's-
would change the width, but not the depth. And we're looking at the depth of 130 feet from Railroad. Yeah.
Well, the threshold question in my mind, and Aaron, you might help me with this, is that if the text amendment was approved and they come in with a special exception, they're conforming with the increased height.
If the amendment, if the regulation is adopted, yes, that would allow for, as long as the buildings were 130 feet from the railroad property line, then yes, this language would allow an average height of 35 feet.
Right.
So yes, the decision would be for the commission to look at this potential regulation that may relate to one lot.
Okay. Any other commission questions at the moment?
I do. I have one.
All right.
If one owner of 2 or 3 adjoining parcels wanted to remove the property lines and make it one large parcel, is there anything our commission can do to prevent that?
If the structures are there, existing, merging the properties could create some nonconformities as far as use. So I think that would have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. If perhaps properties were being merged to have structures demolished and a new development proposed, that's a possibility.
I'm just wondering if that is allowed by right. If 3 adjoining properties are owned by the same owner, can he petition and be allowed by right to remove the property lines?
I think you would come into use problems with compliance with the zoning regulations if you merge properties.
Well, he can merge, but he would have to take the buildings down. Or
Right. If you're looking to leave the existing structures, I think you'd be creating non-conforming
Right, that would be
situations.
But if it were 3 lots, Joe, and they combined them and took 2 buildings down, then that larger lot with 1 building on it would probably not have any, problems with conformity. But I think the question still is, what has to happen for a property owner to say, I want to merge two properties into one?
A merger document filed on the land records,
That's it, right? Yeah,
typically, yes.
There is some oversight when you're trying to change building building lines with the building department, and usually someone from Aaron's department will take a look at it and see. Will not allow the map to be filed if something is incorrect. So,
Yeah. But it's not a planning and zoning approval to do that. If everything is in conformity, it's a land use staff.
Typically.
That's what I thought.
Thanks, Jim and Joe. Anyone else?
I have one question. I think it's for Aaron. So if we were to basically approve the amendment as written and have the sections O added to it, then essentially we would end up with two sections, H and O, that would be conflicting with the chart that shows the 30-foot maximum height.
Right, essentially, yeah, ultimately the table should be updated to reflect that maximum average. It's not a maximum, it's an average building height, correct?
So we were writing O as if it would override the table. If there was a lack of drafting in terms of changing the chart as well, we would add that to our application. So in other words, saying see section O or something along those lines. But
Thank you.
Thank
Okay. Are there any other questions at this moment? Because it is a public hearing, and I don't know whether we have any members of the public who have any questions. At this point, we're not asking them for their position on the amendment, but any questions about what they've heard and seen. So would you please electronically raise your hand, and Aaron will add you to the conversation.
I do not see anyone with their hand raised at this time, Ron.
Hearing or seeing none. We'll continue. Is there anything else we want or need from the applicant before we consider closing the public hearing? None?
None.
Okay. Did somebody saying something?
No, I said none, Ron.
Oh, okay, thanks, Jim.
Goodbye, Jim.
Then I would entertain a motion from a member to close the public hearing. Well, maybe I should ask this, though, just to make sure we dot all the i's and cross the t's. Ask the public again, since they have no questions. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the text amendment? If so, electronically raise your hand. And
I don't see anyone.
seeing none, are there any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the text amendment that's been presented? Raise your hand.
I have one. Let's see, I have Robin Phillips who would like to speak.
Okay. Mr.
Robin?
Phillips?
Yes, members of the commission, thank you. I just have a
Could you-
comment rather than
Mr. Phillips, could I interrupt? Please state your address, please, for the record.
I'm sorry. Robin Phillips, 880 Boston Post Road in Madison. I have, Mr. Chairman, a comment rather than a vote against this. It just seems here that there's a pattern in a whole series of applications here where the applicant submits an application, it does not conform to standards. The next step in the process is to petition for a change to the regulation that will allow the application to conform. We've seen this before. I think that's what we're seeing in this case. And we're looking now at a proposal to change the regulation So the application, which hasn't changed, will now conform to the new regulation. This just seems to me part of a slope, and it's not a particularly slippery slope, but it's a continuous slope. And there's a point where I believe the commissioners have to look at all of these requests and specifically this latest request and question whether this is the way that we want to proceed with development in this town. Thank you for your time. I'm done with my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other hands? No one else, Aaron?
No, there is no one else with their hand raised, no.
Okay. So at this point, I would ask, does anybody wish to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I would just allow one last follow-up from the applicant if they're looking to provide any comments to the commissioners after that.
Comment from Mr. Phillips, please.
Exactly.
John and Mike?
I would just say in relation to this is this property. We are looking not to amend the regulations to really change the nature of the downtown or this area. Again, this area on Wall Street and Railroad Avenue and where this property is there are large buildings here, and these will be smaller residential buildings that will allow for a little more affordable housing and more housing in Madison in general. I would say that whether it's the correction of the chart or this amendment, we are just simply kind of stuck here because again, it's not clear in the regulations. So slightly different from what Mr. Phillips is actually commenting on. So that would be my input there. And I don't know if John has anything to add.
Well, the only thing that I would like to add is that given the nature of what's happened on Wall Street, there's clearly buildings that have violated that 30-foot rule. They've violated the 3,000 square foot rule. And we're simply looking to do a little bit of what's been approved on Wall Street, which is our prime street with this residential scale. And we want to keep the residential scale, but we want to develop the back in a meaningful way.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Matthews?
Yes,
What do you mean violated?
I'm sorry.
You use the term violated, and I take exception to that word.
Okay, well, let me clarify myself. If you look at this regulation somewhere in here, let me find it. It's because I read it again today. Somewhere it says that the maximum area of a building on Wall Street, ground coverage is 3,000 square feet. And I challenge you to ascertain that Cloret's building is 3,000 feet. There's no way it is. And you take the Clarity building, there's no way that building is 3,000 square feet.
So they just went.
I haven't checked it out, but I will bet heavily that they're in violation of that rule.
Did you read the record and the conditions of the approval?
The height.
Hearing?
Yeah, I showed you.
I just take offense to the word violated to defend both the commission and the applicants in those matters. I doubt very much that anybody violated anything. They received an approval, a
I
special.
will retract the word violate and
Okay.
say that I don't think they meet the regulations.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and John, the regulation, John, that you're referring to is 6.2.3I, the maximum first floor interior building area of any structure on a lot fronting on Wall Street shall be 3,000 square feet. The maximum width, in parentheses, dimension of the building parallel to the street, and parentheses, of any building on such a lot shall be 50 feet. I think if the commission has any questions as far as the specifics of the photo examples that Mr. Matthews submitted, then it would be appropriate to hold the public hearing open for staff to be able to provide those dimensions to you to clarify.
I mean, those buildings don't really affect our application. I was just pointing out that in my observation, that they don't, to me, meet paragraph I on Wall Street. Simple as that.
Thank you. Anything else you wish to? The applicant?
And the Claret building clearly doesn't meet the 30-foot height. It's a 4-story building. Look at that photograph 1 again. Could you put that up, Aaron?
I don't think that's necessary.
I think that was 45 feet, wasn't it?
I'm sorry.
Jim, are you looking for something?
Oh, yeah. No, I thought Aaron had shown something where we were discussing where there was 45 feet average building height by special exception in one of these areas here.
Yes, that's subsection H of this particular regulation, where the commission, by special exception permit per section 4, may approve an average height, it is, of 45 feet, excluding properties with frontage on Wall Street. That's what's written in the text of subsection H, although it's not indicated in the table below.
Right.
So anything else, John, you wish to add, or Mike?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
I'm
With that, then at this
I'm
point.
done.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
A
Anyone want-
motion.
Thank you, Joe. Second,
I'll second.
any discussion on that? Okay, motion to close. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none? Seeing none? The hearing is closed. So what do we think? And we can include Aaron, of course. So where do you think we should?
I'll start, Ron.
Thanks, Joe.
I certainly don't think that we should make any decision based on a tit for tat scenario. I like Aaron's suggestion if we want to review minutes and things that compelled our decisions to allow special variances in previous applications, I'm all for extending this public hearing to do that. So I don't think that's a valid argument. That's my initial comment.
Okay. Not sure about that because the public hearing part of it has been closed.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
Good point.
That's correct.
So that ship sailed. That's right.
But I mean, the fact of the matter is they're there.
Yeah.
And in one manner, way, shape, or form, they were approved. So I understand your point. But
Right.
the builder didn't violate it by building it higher than they're approved,
No, you're right.
the conditions. So, but I see where you're coming from. Jim,
Yeah, okay, so with regard to the specific application for the text amendment, I spent some time earlier today looking at all the regulations. I did go online. I looked at the location of the property, looked at the lot, all that kind of thing. Given the nature of what the text amendment change is, 30 to 35 feet average building height, I'm in favor of it. I think just in regard to Mr. Phillips' comments, though, I think that what happens over, and I've seen this over the course of the last 8 years or so that I've been on, is many times we have text in our regulations where there's an application that comes in that points out something that maybe does need updating in our regulations. I think this, the argument here about putting buildings in like this with modern, requirements is valid in this case, without changing really the whole nature of what could go in there by special exception, not by right, but by special exception. So I'm in favor of it. I think we would still need to see whether it's this property or anything else along Railroad that we're looking to make this change. It would still have to be a special exception permit. And, there is the ability of the public and also us to accept or deny an application. But for this specific change, I'm in favor of it.
Actually, I think that was a very poignant way of stating that. I like the way you said that. I think that was a good point.
Thanks, Joe.
Because very often some of our regs haven't been touched in God knows how long.
I'd like to add that I really appreciate, Aaron, your explanation to us of what needs clarification. That was really helpful. And I think while I respect what Mr. Phillips was raising, I think this is such a narrow application of a change in language even. I mean, sorry, maybe application is not the right word because it's not an application, but changing the regulations for this site-specific location, I don't see it in a broader term being applied necessarily. I mean, we're specifically saying Railroad Avenue, and there are only so many parcels along Railroad Avenue there that have the depth that could accommodate this change anyway. Whereas I think anything we can do to clarify the regulations is always a good thing. And having the table be consistent with the language is all for the better.
You're muted, Ron.
Ron, you're muted.
You're muted, Ron.
I was asking Peter Roos what he thought. I'm glad his back showed up.
I couldn't hear you were talking to, Ron. I think I agree with Carol, I think, because, I don't like the idea of doing this willy-nilly for Railroad. On the other hand, when you look at what they can do, there's really only one parcel you could do something with. And so I don't think there's a lot of harm in that. I mean, if all of these were open to be developed that way, then I think we'd never want to do a text amendment to include the whole street. But given that what they're going to do is a fairly narrow property that they can actually deal with and work with, then I think I'd be okay with it.
Thanks, Peter. Elliot.
I agree also. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I do think that we should probably update the chart or the graph there to also match, what we're amending.
Okay. Giselle, how about yourself?
Yeah, not to repeat what everyone said. I mean, I definitely agree with Carol and Jim. And the one thing that I'm taking out of this as a commissioner is, this is the process. This is what we do. you know, well, not necessarily an application, but, in process, you see something that needs, whether it's clarification or updating or change, because you want to make an impact on our planning and zoning in our town. And here we are doing exactly that. So I'm definitely in favor for all the reasons above.
Thank you, Giselle. Well said. I think we've polled everybody, and I certainly don't want to be duplicative of anything that's been said and well said. So with that, I will call the vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me, Aaron, do you have anything you want to add? I know it's all about it's going to ask for a motion.
I just wanted to remind the commission that as a combined planning and zoning commission, in your finding for potential adoption of a proposed zoning regulation, that you would need to make a finding that this adoption would be consistent with the plan of conservation and development. That's it.
Okay. And I can think of a number of parts. I don't have it right here in front of me. I have the book nearby, but that would make it consistent with the plan POCD. From, I don't know, I heard two forms of housing tonight. John was talking about upscale housing and 9-foot ceilings, and Mike Iacursey used the word affordable. So I assume it'll be somewhere in between, but not that it is affordable housing. But, more residential downtown, economic development, a number of boxes it checks on the POCD, in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
So whether we need to, or you want to add anything specific to that, Aaron, if that's necessary, or if anybody disagrees with me.
No, I just wanted to remind you that in making your findings and your motions to include some language to that effect.
Thank you. So is anybody willing to make a motion and include that part to it? I think it's obvious where everybody sits. Anyone?
Okay, Ron, I'll take a stab at it. I make a motion that we approve the application for the text amendment as written, and in doing so, we find it to be consistent with the plan of conservation and development.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Peter Roos, the second. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the text
Aye.
amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, obviously. So John and Mike, thank you for your presentation. And I assume you'll be following up in the not too distant future of that application you talked about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's listening and support. Thank you.
Have a
Yes.
good evening.
Thank you,
And
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Aaron, we have a number of items on our agenda that are listed here. Anything you want to bring to our attention with regards to those?
Let's see. Most of these are indicated on the agenda with some updates. 307, they're pending applications. 307 Neck Road. The commission tabled discussion, awaiting some reactions to deep comments. So that would be tabled to our next meeting at December 2nd. And we'll wait for an update from the applicant. Wildwood Avenue is tabled pending inland wetlands action. So that's on for the December 16th meeting. Scotland Avenue, this will be a public hearing for an affordable housing development. That public hearing has been set and noticed for December 2nd. So that's coming up. We have a new receipt that the commission, I would ask if and refresh my memory if you are making motions for scheduling public hearings. But this is a new receipt has some health code issues to work out as far as septic capacity and design. And so to allow the applicant time to handle that, it would be my recommendation to push it out the 65 days to the January 6th, 2022 meeting for a public hearing. Do you typically take action to schedule public hearings? Ron, I can't hear you again.
Historically, we have not.
Okay.
It's been within the purview of the town planner to balance the agenda to try and move. I know we have restrictions, but do their best to
Okay. That
you know,
works.
number of 11 o'clock nights and do that
Yeah.
type of. So we
So
don't
that-
have. Okay, but does everybody have a preference to do it in another manner? Any members, or should we just continue doing what historically we've done?
I think it's worked the way we've done it in the
Yeah.
past, Aaron, so I would say
Excellent.
with that.
Okay, so you'll know that one's coming down the road here in the new year. And our last, we do have our Beach and Rec and Senior Services Director, Austin Hall, here, waiting patiently for his site plan modification application for Salt Meadow Park, where the town is seeking to amend the original approval, which called for a combined restroom, concession building, storage building on the property. And they're looking to change that design proposal and have a cedar open pavilion in its existing location or originally approved location. So we do have some plans here. I don't know if Austin, if you can hear me, if you're ready, there you are. Okay, so I'm happy to share some of those documents. Austin, if you want to give a brief overview, and I can share what was originally approved and what's proposed now for changes, and maybe you can let everybody know how your meeting with ACA went earlier this week.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me, everybody. So yeah, Salt Meadow Park. Before I got on board, there was a proposal that went in front of you all for a large concession bathroom area, and there's just not funding available for that. So we would like to put in an open air pavilion in that same section that was originally approved by you all. And we met with ACA on Tuesday, and they approved the drawings and the colors of the metal roofing and all that stuff. So it's coming to you tonight for approval to get that construction underway, if we can.
Okay.
Okay, I'll share GIS here just as an overview so that the commission can familiarize themselves with the specific area we're talking about here. You can see this is Salt Meadow Park here, Boston Post Road to the north. This is the east side where we're coming into Clinton here. Driveway entrance, the sports field, and the existing parking area. I think many of you will recall that the town did install and have approved with you a temporary ground array, solar array that is in this area here. There's an existing kiosk where there's that's our source of power in the park, as well as a general cedar style informational kiosk. This particular grass area is the subject area where Beach and Rec is proposing to put the pavilion. So now that you are looking where we've been, I can share with you the original approval for this particular space. I'm not sure how many of you were here during that process. The park itself is a special exception approval, coastal site plan, and site plan modification. So here to the north, this is the driveway coming in. The sports fields are over on your left-hand side, and this is that grass area that I just showed you. And the original design was a hangar style building, I think, that pulled in the old airport design and feel. This building was an accessible building with restroom facilities, concession, and some storage for the park. As Austin indicated, the proposal has changed, finances, et cetera. And at this point, there is a desire to have some type of structure to provide shade and other picnic and rental capacity here. I can bear with me here, and I'll get our next photo up. The original design of the building. I can zoom in here for you. Was this hangar kind of style full building? It had solar panels on the roof. The floor plan had, that was the existing hangar area, concession, restrooms, and a storage facility, and then adjacent parking there. So that's what the original approval is. The new proposal, let's see. This is a portion of an engineered site plan. This is for orientation. This is the parking lot area. Again, this is that grass area. It's proposed a 30 by 40 foot open pavilion here. This is the existing, it's labeled as a utility shed. That's also known as the kiosk that kind of hides that those utilities, which will be the source of power for the pavilion. And at a future date, restroom facilities will be explored with the potential of this location. That particular request would come back to you for a future site plan modification. One question that came up as part of this pavilion project was that when the ground array came before the commission, it was approved as a temporary ground array, and with the idea that a rooftop solar would then either be relocated or a different system, if needed, be installed on the pavilion. That is a question that the commission should address, as far as if that is something that's still desired to relocate that ground array, or to leave that where it is. That would require additional funding. The pavilion, I think, can structurally support solar panels, but that would require additional funding at a later date to relocate them. So that wouldn't necessarily coincide with the actual construction of this pavilion in the short term. I can show you the rendering for the pavilion. It's a straightforward open cedar pavilion, and a seamed metal roof, correct, Austin? And I think that's like a hunter green, kind of deep green color, and the hardware is a finished black, finished for all of the support bracing. This is also a coastal application. Staff did not feel the need to refer this too deep for comments, as the existing location and the overall intended use of public access and as an open park already with conservation easements seem to be in keeping and consistent with the coastal use and resource policies that were originally considered for the park.
Okay. And were there any comments from ACA other than approving it? Worth passing along?
I think they likened it to a pavilion that's existing at Hammonasset. Seemed that it will be visible from the road, but of natural colors and materials. There's no lighting proposed. There's no lighting on the at the park at all. And that remains to be the same plan here. It's a dawn to dusk facility. So no, there weren't any other concerns of the committee.
All right. May I ask two questions out of curiosity, either you or Austin? One is kind of an aside. If there's no power down there, what do the solar panels that are there now do?
So I actually had that
Out of curiosity.
conversation with Woody Weiss. Yeah, so I was curious as well too. So I had that conversation with Woody Weiss yesterday, and from what I understand, it powers the irrigation system
Oh, okay.
when used. And other than that, not much, Mr. Clark. We do concerts down there in the summer. We show movies there, but the draw from those solar panels is insignificant. So it just goes back to the grid.
Just a question of curiosity, not germane to what we're trying to achieve here. And the second one was, again, more out of curiosity, what is the intent of the pavilion? What do you envision it be used for?
Sure. So Madison Youth Soccer, Madison Youth Lacrosse, play on Strong Field from April through the end of October, and this will give opportunity for teams, parents to have gatherings under the pavilion in a covered shelter. The opportunities for rentals, such as we do at Bauer Park at the pavilion there.
Yep.
Just an area for folks to gather while using the fields, or to rent for birthday parties, gatherings, as such.
Interesting.
Austin, does this provide any more flexibility for Beach and Rec Department as a whole for summer camps? Now that there would be considered, currently there's no shelter at the park for any camps to be held there. Does this allow for that facility to now open up for camp programming?
That's a great point, Aaron. Thank you. Yeah, so it'll be another facility that we can use for environmental programming, which typically takes place at Bauer and Surf Club. So now we'll have another location to be able to do some environmental marine biology programs there that are different than those other two locations, and provide a different ecosystem that would be great to have adults and children learn in that setting.
Any questions of Austin or Aaron, who made the presentation?
I have one, Ron, if I might. It's Jim.
Sure.
Aaron, you had mentioned something about questioning the removal of the existing the ground-mounted solar array, and the application states that this will be the construction of the 30 by 44 foot open pavilion with rooftop solar and removal of existing ground-mounted solar array.
So that was the original intent of the approval. I think it was 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the commission did approve the ground array as a temporary structure, knowing that at some point in the future, the restroom facility would be constructed and it was originally intended to have the solar on the roof.
Right.
Given funding, perhaps there's grant availability that may allow for the relocation. I don't know if the existing structure can actually be relocated onto the roof, or if it has to be a whole new panel system to work there. I think Woody Weiss would probably be the better person to answer that question. But it just, in all transparency, the current funding does not include mounting a solar array on the roof. And if that is a condition, that would have to be a goal in the next year or two, I think, to get that to happen.
Well, I guess my issue with it is simply that the application states that's what we're, if we approve it, that's what we're approving. The construction of the pavilion with the rooftop solar and removal of existing ground mounted solar array. So if that's not going to be happening, then the application should be reworded.
I think that's the goal of the application. I think looking at the park, that was the intent, was not to have a ground array, was to have that rooftop mounted. And so if that is still the commission's desire, and Beach and Rec can find a way to make that work at some point in the near future with funding, then that should be the approval. If the commission is okay with a ground mount remaining there, then essentially that you would approve that ground mount as a permanent structure and not temporary. But you originally approved it as a temporary structure, so you should address it in some fashion at this point.
Thanks,
I have a
Jim.
So
question.
if I could,
Is that your hand up?
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a question on it. Is the solar array owned by the town, or is it part of a power purchase agreement like most of the other systems in town, on town buildings?
same. Yeah, you're correct.
It's a power purchase agreement? So was it
I
not
believe
part of
so,
the
yeah.
original agreement with the owner of the system to relocate the array onto the pavilion at their own expense, or?
No.
I know in the initial application, they were supposed to fence in the ground array, and that did not happen. You know, I think we'd have to involve Woody, that's who does these at the town level. I don't recall reading that they would be responsible for it. I did not see that in any of the documents, but could definitely research that.
Okay.
And then my other comment about the ground array is it's been there 4 years now. And we have not received any negative feedback or comments on it. There has been no vandalism towards it. Nothing has broken. So if that means anything to you, it's gone well as it stands since it's been installed.
Thank you, Austin. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Well, let's maybe this way, to deal with both the pavilion and the solar. They're related but separate. How about we have a motion and then try and work it out in discussion? Is anybody willing to make an motion to either approve or deny?
Before we make a motion, I'm just curious as to whether Elliot has any more commentary.
Well, a little bit. I mean, I just feel that if the ground array was done as a power purchase agreement with the a third party owning it, they really should be responsible for the relocation of the system. If it was part of a temporary approval going into it, it should have been known that it was going to have to be relocated to the rooftop. And then further, the town is basically in an agreement to purchase power at a given rate for power that we're not even consuming at all. Basically, we're selling it back at wholesale rate to the utility company. So I think basically we should push the owner of the system to relocate it as originally planned at their own expense. I mean, for the town to incur more expense for a system where they're not even utilizing the electricity is kind of foolish, in my opinion.
I think that's a good point, and I think we have, I mean, how is our footing, Elliot, as far as negotiating power?
That I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how the power purchase agreement was written. But I mean, I do remember when we did the approval that it was supposed to be temporary. And I thought it was part of the cost would be incurred by the owner, but I would have to go back to kind of look at the minutes from when we did that approval.
Well, I think these are good points and a good question, Joe, and an interesting answer, Elliot. What I think we might want to do, however, is have a motion to approve. And then if that's seconded, then in discussion, discuss, because I believe, Austin, is there some bit of urgency on Beach and Recs and to, get this pavilion erected?
A little bit. So the longer we wait for construction, the costs are going to go up due to concrete and such. So yeah, if we could do it tonight, that would be much appreciated. But if not, I understand as well.
And theoretically, again, based upon our discussion, then I'll defer to you, Aaron.
I think Aaron's point, Ron, was pretty good as far as we can approve knowing that.
Well, that's why I want a motion.
Yeah.
And then discuss the details.
I'll make that
Does
motion.
that make sense to you, Aaron?
Yes, I was just going to bring up also that Beach and Rec will likely be returning to the commission at some point in the near future to explore a separate restroom facility on the property and a potential dog park as well. And so those are two opportunities where if we allow for the temporary array to remain for another extended period of time, with the expectation that when the department returns to you, they will have a plan for relocating that ground array if that's the commission's desire. So that allows for this particular project to move forward and also gives some time to explore costs and whether or not that the power purchase agreement does allow for some of that cost to be shared with the owner of the equipment.
Thank you. Okay, well, then again, I think it's appropriate now to get a motion on the floor and then discuss the details.
I'll make the motion, Ron.
Thank you, Joe. And that includes the CAM?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll motion to approve with the CAM and the ability to work out the details of.
Well,
moving.
just now we're going to discuss the details.
Okay.
So not to downplay what you're saying, but I think that's what we go to the next step if we get a second.
I agree.
Anybody willing to second the motion that Joe just made? Anybody?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Jim's opposed?
Well, we didn't have the discussion. I'm opposed.
I know it. Now you have discussion before you vote.
Just You just asked for the vote. That's all.
well, but you need to approve this. You need the second, then you vote on the motion, not to approve.
That's not what you did, though.
Well, excuse me, then
I'm sorry, Ron.
motion and a second. You need an approval. You need the commission to agree to consider the motion, right?
Motion was
So
to
that's all I'm doing,
approve, right?
not to approve, to have discussion. You need a motion and a second. Well, I guess, okay, I see what you're saying. I'll skip that step. Now we'll have discussion.
Well, usually the third step is all in favor.
Right.
Right.
Or opposed. And that's where we were, and I opposed.
Okay, motion and a
There
second.
is-
We'll have dis- Maybe I was dotting too many i's and crossing too many t's.
So you're not asking for a vote yet, then?
No, I was asking, to, everybody was comfortable with the motion, but that was unnecessary.
Okay. I'm not comfortable with the approval, the motion to approve, only because it's written to say that it's the construction of the building and the removal of so I think that the application itself has to be rewritten, or we have to make a modification to it. If there isn't a plan right now to go ahead and put the solar array on it, I mean, I'm in favor of Austin being able to go ahead and build the building, but the application, if we were to approve the application as submitted, we'd be approving an application to build the building and
Oh, yeah.
the solar panels and remove the other. And that's what I'm against, because that's not what the intent is at this point.
Right. And could that be done, Aaron, I'll ask you, because Jim's point is absolutely valid, is the way that through a condition, if we choose to go in that direction, that the move of the solar array can be delayed, can be lagged, or something to allow the pavilion to take shape, but yet still address the solar.
Sure, you can modify an approval to allow the ground array to remain. And that will be documented as part of, in the record as your approval, and run, that would be fine. You would just have to state clearly on the record how you would like to modify the approval. If it's for a specific amount of time, or if you would, did you have a
Right.
specific suggestion, Jim, maybe for wording?
I didn't have one with regard to time. The wording simply would be that we approve the application for the construction of the building and allow the installation of solar panels to take place at a later date. And if we think we should have a later date having a time bound on it, we could do that as well. But I think at a later date would suffice.
I agree with Jim 100%. So I will modify my approval. to
Well, no,
say
that
I-
would be a condition, Joe.
Yep.
We don't have to do that if we make this a condition of approval.
Oh, okay. That's a good point.
But I would ask Austin, there's two ways to go about this. We could put it off, table this until you got some more information about what the third party is responsible for and willing to do, and come back with that information in a couple of weeks. Does that make sense, Aaron, as an alternative?
I think there was a sense of urgency from the town as
Yeah.
in all transparency, the structure is sitting at the park currently. And they're looking to pour concrete before any freeze. So I think it could be left to the commission's discretion as far as a timeframe to allow the solar either, an additional year or two for the ground array to remain. You can word it that way, or require that it needs to be addressed and roof mounted at the time of restroom facility installation, something, either of those, there's some flexibility there, how you want to do it.
And as Aaron said, I'll be coming back to you all shortly for dog park discussion as well as the bathroom facility. So there'll be ample opportunity for us to discuss the situation with the ground array and the possibility of putting the solar on the roof if that's what you choose. But if we could separate those two and get permission to start construction, that would be very helpful.
And I think it would be helpful too to circle back with, if we write such a condition, Austin, and make this approval this evening, we have a very valuable asset on our board that you can lean on for some prescient advice as far as negotiating your standpoint with whatever that power company is.
Thank you. I assume that's Elliot.
Yes.
True. So I guess, the fact that there may be other applications following up that may address the dog park or something are not particularly germane. There may be opportunities to have this resolved, but they in themselves won't. So I don't know, Jim, I believe, or maybe Joe mentioned the date certain for compliance with the move, and giving enough time for it to somehow be resolved or taken care of with the dog park or the restrooms, so that we can approve the pavilion, get that on its way. Yet there's some time to work our way through with Elliot's help what can be done or what can be forced to be done by the third party to get that array moved up on the roof. That concept makes sense to anybody?
Yeah.
Nobody?
Yeah. So with Robert's rules, then we can modify the motion with the new wording, and then.
No, I'm saying it's a condition of approval. We put that in, that it's approved with the proviso that the solar array, is expected to be moved within this date certain, and that covers it. Or is an alternative is to amend the motion, change the motion. Either way, what do you think would be the easiest way to do it, Aaron?
I think the latter of what you just said is easier, Ron, because the condition is unwavering.
So is the motion to approve.
So,
But it makes no difference to me. Whatever you folks are comfortable with is fine with me. I was just trying to take a little shortcut, and rather than going back and through. But Joe, if you want to.
Well, no, let's defer to Aaron.
well, I think you're there. You're almost there. Your motion, from what I'm getting, is an approval for the installation of the pavilion with the condition that the ground array be relocated to the rooftop no later than, and that way we can get an initial construction of the pavilion, and you can provide a time frame in which you're looking to have that ground array relocated. If that's your desire, you just have to give me an idea of how long you're looking for.
So question, and I'm not trying to belabor this by any standpoint, but if we say a no later than 12 months from today, what happens if we fail at negotiating with the company that installed it? Now we're forcing the town's hand to put out however many dollars to relocate it. Is that how it would work?
Well, Joe,
that
provides 1 year window for the town to explore that, and should something derail that process, then Austin does have the opportunity to return to you to seek a modification of that approval.
Oh, true.
And you can revisit it again. So that's a logical way to handle this, is to give him a little more time to look into the logistics of relocating that, and should he need more time, he can return to you.
So then why don't we just add the condition, Ron, that we approve the project to move forward with the condition that the current temporary ground array remains status quo for the next 12 months, with the requirement that within said 12 months, it be relocated to the roof of the gazebo pavilion.
Yeah. Or within 12 months will be moved,
Right.
something like that. Is that acceptable, everybody? Jim?
Yeah, that's fine.
Austin, is that
Yes, sir.
a need?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with that, now I'll call for the real vote. I apologize for that earlier. No, for any further discussion. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimous. Thanks for putting up with us, Austin.
Well, I appreciate my first experience with planning and zoning was a good one. Thank you.
Good. Well, it was nice dealing with you. You're a gentleman.
Don't get used to it, Austin.
And thank you, Erin, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Austin. Thanks.
you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. We have one, other than minutes, we have one item on the agenda that is a discussion over our meeting format for December and going into 2022. As you know, we've followed Zoom now for about a year and a half. And the opportunity has presented itself with the changes in town hall to go back to live meetings if we choose to do so. The governors or the carve out for Zoom meetings and so forth are still in effect till April, I believe.
Through April 2022, yes.
So we have somewhat of an option. And we need to know, particularly for reasons of advanced public notice, how we feel we want to conduct our meetings through the end of the year or as long as till the end of April. And that's what we wanted to kick around. I wish Dr. Hay was here because it gets a little bit complicated if we go to the live meeting format, because as I understand it, under the rules, that if a member of the commission or the member of the public is uncomfortable attending the meeting, then we go with a hybrid format, which, as I've been told by those who have lived in it, is a little bit awkward doing it that way. And it is rather expensive for the town because IT is involved with the meeting and so forth. Erin, maybe you could comment on that. But what we're trying to do tonight is just decide for the next short period of time whether we want to continue with Zoom or switch to live. So Erin, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Sure. So the law does allow for Zoom meetings or hybrid meetings through April 2022. There's scuttle that this may eventually evolve into another bill that will allow some type of a hybrid continuance, but in typical fashion, that will be last minute, and we won't know what that is until it's adopted. But yes, should the commission decide to return to in-person meetings, if there is a member of your agency, a commissioner who wishes to attend the meetings remotely, that needs to be available, be made available to the commissioner. So it would be a good idea to at least get a sense from the entire commission and a read of how you would like to proceed, so that we can make sure that we have the proper setup. Our meeting room A does have hybrid capabilities. Hybrid can show its own challenges, both from a staffing standpoint and screen sharing to understanding who is speaking. But those, should that be the way the commission wants to go, we will adapt, as other towns have been doing as well. If a member of the public wishes to, if it's a in-person meeting, excuse me, I believe it's a hybrid, not a hybrid, if it's a remote meeting and a member of the public within 24 hours provides a written request, the town does need to provide a location and device for which someone from the public can attend that meeting remotely. It does not necessarily mean we have to create a hybrid meeting format. So there is some ease to just remaining hybrid, remaining remote and no in-person. But of course, the mask requirements have been lifted for vaccinated individuals in town hall. So we do have the ability to have in-person meetings. And that it's really up to your discretion how you'd like to proceed. I do think December will likely be all remote. We've already advertised for a remote meeting through our legal notice for the meeting of the 2nd. And I guess perhaps the 16th could be in person, since we don't have a public hearing scheduled for that date. But January is all up in the air.
I have some thoughts about put hybrid aside for a minute, just strictly in person and Zoom with the regulations. I've felt there's two schools of thought about the remote meetings and Zoom with the public, and one is that it's not good, but there is also a school of thought that it makes it much easier for the public to attend a meeting, to participate in a meeting, and increases the size of your audience, particularly when it's something that has garnered a lot of attention. And I think we have a couple of those on the radar, possibly. So going into the coldest and darkest part of the year, being able to do it all remotely might be beneficial. I understand there are drawbacks to it. The second thing is, if we go to live or even hybrid with a public hearing and a large attendance, I think a case could be made that will people have to show proof of vaccination in order to be able to attend the meeting without a mask, and getting into those types of things in a crowded room. Is social distancing required? Trying to get 50 or 60 people into the fishbowl. I don't know have the answers. I just know there are potentially issues, and maybe it's best to try to continue in the short term with Zoom. Maybe it's not. What do you folks think? That's
you know what I think, Ron. I mean, as I sit here with a panoramic array of monitors, this is so much easier.
I can understand.
I mean, Ron, Peter, I would love to go back in person, but I think it's pushing it right now, to tell you the truth. Certainly through December, January and February, we are coming into the winter months. We're seeing cases rise again. This could all be pulled out from underneath us pretty quickly. Yet again, you're right. You raised the issue of, can you prove you've been vaccinated in a crowded room? And I also think that for applications we had, like the ledges, we got more public participation through this venue than we ever would have in that fishbowl. So I guess I would be one to say, let's just table going back in person until the coast is clear, if you will, and just continue on with remote for a while.
Thank you, Peter.
I agree.
Jim?
Yeah, my preference is remote. I'm agreeing with Peter as well. at least, perhaps through April, we could say. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
maybe by that time, we can meet in the metaverse with avatars. Joe can set that up for us.
I can.
I have a question for Aaron. Aaron, has the town upgraded ventilation and done other things as well in the buildings, or not so much?
I can't, I can't say. I was not here from the beginning of COVID, so I would have to speak to our facilities director to see if any improvements have been made to the building itself since the onset. I can let you know, though. I'm happy to.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Sure.
Aaron, I have one question for you.
Yes.
Has there been much in the way of complaints from the public regarding the fact that there's not live meetings?
Not too many. I've heard a couple here and there of individuals asking or saying they'd prefer to attend a hearing in person. I've heard applicants and some attorneys talk about how the dynamic of a public hearing sometimes is just not the same. Of being part of, seeing people's faces who are testifying rather than just allowing people to speak as well. So I think, from a housekeeping standpoint, eliminating chat features and things like that during public hearings is beneficial for remote meetings to maintain the typical decorum of the commission with the applicant and the public. But overall, I think professionals themselves who have been hired by applicants have enjoyed that. They can attend more than one meeting in one evening. There is some convenience, clearly. And as Peter said, we have seen it both ways where we've had an overwhelming response from the public because it is convenient to stay home and log on to meetings as opposed to coming in person. But yes, we are getting back into the winter months, so there could be some potential backsteps with the virus that we may not see coming yet.
So I'm definitely in agreement with Peter and Jim and Joe. I think I'd like to continue doing remote probably through April as long as we're allowed to. I like the format. I mean, I realize we've had some audio issues here and there, like earlier this evening, but for the most part, I think, doing the remote is a much better way to go right now. And the level of participation that we have had in many of the meetings would have been much lower without it.
Thank you, Elliot. Does anybody have if we were to be talking the other direction and going live, is there anybody that's here tonight would feel a little bit apprehensive in attending a meeting in what potentially could be a crowded room?
I would.
You would?
You're saying have an issue with attending?
Yeah, want to stay hybrid for your own.
If it were going to be a crowded meeting, I would probably opt to do hybrid if we were back live again.
And I can't speak for Dr. Hay, but on at least two occasions, she's, been a strong proponent of staying remote or hybrid herself as a commissioner. But I can't speak for her tonight. So we're pretty much in agreement that we'd like to, and I think there's no reason we couldn't change this if we talk, like you said, to April, and we decided any time between now and then to change. We certainly have the ability to do that. Right, Aaron?
Yes, you just keep in mind that we're roughly advertising, and planning a month in advance. So knowing if the commission would like to go through April, then that helps us with our legal notices Because, it's a little different now. During the emergency orders, the commissions were allowed to post legal notices on the website, and that would meet the FOIA requirements. And when the statute and the law changed July 1st, we went back to in-print newspaper notices. And with that, there is a delay. We have to get those notices a good week and a half early to the newspaper for printing. And then they run the following 2 weeks. So it's at least 3 weeks. So if you were looking, we couldn't, and we had public hearings scheduled, we couldn't just up and decide the next meeting would be in person, because we wouldn't meet those notification requirements.
So I think maybe then, are we saying for the time being, for the foreseeable future, I don't think we need a specific date, because it rolls forward as we may want to change it, that we in a Zoom format. Is that where everybody seems to be coming from?
Yep, I agree.
Anybody disagree? Okay, so I don't think we need a vote or a motion. We just move forward that way. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
I will share with you one conversation I had day before yesterday with Aaron, because of the public participation remotely, is trying to possibly have the speaker, member of the public, appear on the screen, so they're addressing the commission face to face, and also they're being seen by those in the rest of the audience. It may be a little unwieldy to do that when there's a lot of speakers, but it's something we're going to look into and see if we can improve a little bit with the face of the public, with literally by showing the face of the public for all to see. So
I
Sure,
agree with
as a
that.
guest for webinars. Excuse me, Joe. Yes, as a participant or an attendee at a webinar, you really can only see the people who are panelists. And so during the public comment portion, we did discuss whether or not it would be beneficial to transfer those speakers over as a panelist during their time that they'd like to address the commission or the applicant, so that they're visible to the public and to the applicant and the
So
commission.
it's
a good idea.
Attempt to do that. Okay, anything else on that subject? Thank you, everybody, for your guidance on that. Elliot, do you have any minutes you want to review?
I do. I have two sets here. The first one is our October 21st, 2021 meeting. Members that were present were Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, McDowell, Mathers, Hay, and Berlin. Alternate present, Snow. Entertain a motion to approve.
Elliot, sorry, I have a quick comment.
Yes.
I believe I was seated for Joel Miller at that meeting. So I think we usually include that information.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that was recorded.
Did we?
Oh,
I
no,
don't know.
yes, actually, on the second page, it says that you were seated for Commissioner Joel Miller.
Oh, okay, thanks. And on the
Okay.
other minutes, it was right up at the top, so I missed it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Peter, seconded by Jim. Any discussions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Our second one is our meeting dated November 4th, 2021. Members present, Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, McDowell, and Hay. Alternates present, Stowe, Ruse, and Bodenson. We'll entertain a motion.
I have one niggly little thing, a typo where Aaron is referred to as Mr. Mannix.
Ooh.
Ooh.
That is not a small typo.
Not niggly.
Thank you.
It's above pending applications.
Some of us remember that as a detective show back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, who played
That was
Manic?
named after a relative.
Mike
believe it
Connors
or
played
not.
that.
Okay, yeah, so basically 3 lines above pending applications.
Yep, there it is.
So if we're making changes before we actually entertain a motion to approve, on that same set of minutes, right near or below perhaps that where Carol identified, the date, it references a date. I think it's discussion of accessory apartments. No, that was it was to meet the state requirements. There's a date that said December 6, it's supposed to be December 16.
Oh, under the Scotland Avenue.
Yeah,
Yes, you're
Yep,
correct.
so in the second paragraph, that should be December 16th.
right.
Okay. I guess we can do a motion now. Anybody have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Jim, seconded by Peter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. I assume we did all the changes.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm sure Marlene got them. Comments? Nothing other than I've been amazed at watching the progress of Chase Bank downtown. Has it been downtown race
Yeah.
recently? That's moving along. Wow. They are moving right along. The signs are up and it's lit. And I guess they're fitting out the interior right now.
Which one was that, Ron?
Chase.
Chase?
Yeah,
Yes.
next-
They're
Danny.
requesting their final compliance. John and I are actually going out there tomorrow.
Wow.
You know, and as an aside, I don't know how many, and I'll leave it at this, but we had an application a few months back from Bank of America for that
Lighting.
lighting. And it was, oh my God, it's too insecure. We can't put that drive-through ATM up. And the corporate fellow. And we approved it, but not with the lighting. And miraculously, that ATM is now operational. So we got the best of both worlds out of that one. It was a good job by the commission to not subject that area to so much more light.
Yeah.
The banking was improved. So, but that's all I have other than to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
You too.
two.
You have anything you want to add, Aaron?
No, I don't. Thanks. I've talked enough.
Thank you.
You did a good job. Thanks. Anybody willing to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Other
I'll
than every-
second.
Joe and Elliot. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening and enjoy the holiday.
You too.
too.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Ron,
You
Bye,
too.
everybody.
very much.
Take care.